Hi, my dearest family. So today we are going to be talking about the upcoming new moon in the sign of Libra, which is quite dramatic. There's a lot to mention about it. We've got a grand cross happening with this new moon. We've got a yacht configuration. This new moon is in interaction with all outer planets, all social planets. So basically Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, Neptune, Uranus. So of course, this new moon might be quite life-changing. And it's not going to be apparent immediately. So potentially we might be seeing this unfolding in the next 9 months. So let's get talking about this new moon. I mean, first of all, the new moon is all about new beginnings because it is part of a configuration, two of them actually. The new moon is going to be the focal point here, and the new moon represents new beginnings in the field of relationships, diplomacy, justice, balance, social contracts. And it's definitely a call for fairness and how to create harmony and peace. Now, we've got this grand cross configuration happening, and that would be a aspect pattern. And this aspect pattern often comes with tension or crisis that demand attention from us. So the 4 points are basically in a dynamic struggle, creating a feeling of being pulled in multiple directions at once. And it forces issues into the open. So basically, we've got the new moon in the sign of Libra. It's opposing Chiron in the sign of Aries. It's squaring Jupiter in Cancer, and it is even in a square to Pluto in Aquarius, which is going to be an out of sign square. So to start with, the new moon, like I said, it's all about the need for partnership and balance. Chiron in the sign of Aries is the wound of identity. We might believe that we don't have the right to exist. And it opposes the new moon. So the Aries Libra axis is very much about me versus others, or me versus we. And there is a conflict there. Which one to choose? Am I going to choose you, let's say to stick together, or am I going to be going on my own path? And then we've got Jupiter in Cancer, which is all about the expansion of security, our home, family, but it also represents national identity as well. So this new moon actually features the current Jupiter and Chiron square. And we had a new moon happening back in 2023 March, we had a Jupiter and Chiron conjunction happened in 2023 March, and the current full moon in Aries was highlighting the Jupiter and Chiron square as well. So this new moon is actually somehow connected to that 2023 March, but I have spoken about that in my previous video. And then we've got the Pluto in Aquarius, which is an out of sign square though, but we've got some transformative, revolutionary power there of the collective, the technology, the future ideas. So what's very interesting here is that we've got the present, the past, and the future are meeting because Aquarius is futuristic, Cancer is the past, and then the Aries Libra axis is going to be the present. Now we've got the yacht configuration as well, and the yacht is all about something that is fated on one hand, but we have to make necessary adjustments around it. Often it's awkward, uncomfortable. Often it even creates kind of like jokey type of scenarios as well. And the apex of it is going to be the new moon in Libra. That's the focal point there. So it means that in order for us to move forward, we're going to have to make adjustments. We're going to need partners. We're going to need to be in a relationship. We're going to have to be brave enough to end the relationship and so forth. But the base of that yacht is going to be the Saturn Neptune in Pisces and the Uranus in the sign of Gemini. So the base represents an opportunity in a way to upgrade our spiritual ideas, our spiritual belief system, and it gives us the opportunity to forgive and to move on from something. But it happens through revolutionary information and, of course, open-mindedness, communication. So let's bring these together. Let me give you some ideas of what we might be expecting with this. And then I'm going to break it down a little bit deeper as well. So, positively speaking, it could really talk to us about relationship healing. So we can be addressing a wound around independence and self-worth. Maybe it's going to allow us to enter a new partnership, a new relationship, and that's going to feel more balanced rather than one that is based on codependency or having to sacrifice your identity. I think this one is definitely going to be a call on finding the courage to be yourself within a relationship. And then also, maybe you are ready to build a fulfilling foundation. So the tension from that ground cross can act a motivator to create a new home, for example, a new family situation that honors both your personal needs as well as your partner's needs. And maybe you are ready to kind of pick up a call and answering basically your calling. It's kind of like that you'd act like an intuitive nudge there. So you get this intuitive hit, this groundbreaking piece of information, and that is going to be transforming your spiritual beliefs, the path that you are on, and hopefully you are ready to make some life-changing or life changes, basically. Negatively speaking, it could indicate that we can lash out on others. We might be analyzing the situation. A ground cross can be super overwhelming. We can feel torn between our wounded ego, Chiron in Aries, the family demands, there's Jupiter in Cancer, the society basically, which is Pluto in Aquarius, what's right, what's wrong in this scenario, and your partner's needs, which is the Libra moon. And which one am I going to choose? And then you might end up like being unable to choose and you remain stuck. And then you can have the outburst and it might damages all your relationships. And it could represent codependencies and power struggles as well, because you are trying to find security, and that's Jupiter in Cancer. And maybe you enter a new relationship, which is the new moon in Libra, that is deeply imbalanced. And then certain type of power struggles are erupting. And it feels like that the needs of the partner is threatening my survival, the sense of self, and you might start feeling manipulated by others, by family, or that social pressure, basically. And that's pretty much the Pluto in Aquarius. I mean, on a global level, this could talk to us about positively diplomatic agreements and breakthroughs. I mean, the Grand Cross definitely indicates a certain type of a crisis where, nations are forced to sit down at a table and then negotiate. And therefore, if we come to terms, new treaties and alliances can be born. And then maybe we are ready to address long-standing conflicts, historical grievances, which is Jupiter in Cancer, as well as Chiron in Aries. And then we can make a peace deal. But also, maybe a global meta, which let's say around food or agriculture or vulnerable people, basically. That's the Jupiter in Cancer. And then we are kind of like getting together to find a solution for it. These are some of the positive scenarios that I can imagine. Negatively speaking, it can be the escalation of international conflicts, unfortunately. Like I said, with the Grand Cross, it could be very snappy. There could be aggression there. There could be military actions with Chiron in Aries. And of course, we do that because we want to protect our homeland, and that's Jupiter in Cancer. And therefore, when it comes to that new moon, which would be the representation of diplomatic channels, they can break down completely. And therefore, I mean, Libra also represents justice system as well. So we can see that the justice system is failing somehow, and it can represent certain type of protests, for example, with Uranus in Gemini. With Chiron in Aries, that would be happening because of my individual rights or the national security, and that's Jupiter in Cancer. And certain type of alliances and treaties can go pretty bad. So this is very briefly what this new moon might be about. So let's look at it a little bit deeper. I mean, Libra is the diplomat, the judge, the peacemaker. This is about fairness. This is the sign that seeks balance, and it believes in the idea of contracts, be it marriage contract or an international treaty, doesn't necessarily matter. But also with Libra, we're weighing options. Like we have got two opposing sides, and then we are trying to find the middle ground. So the ground cross is really an indication of a tug of war here. We've got the opposition to it, which is to the wounded warrior, and that's Chiron in Aries. So, this somehow indicates that it feels like that my individuality is threatened. I'm somehow, it's kind of like I'm bleeding. It feels like that I don't have the right to exist. It's kind of like someone is shouting that you are ignoring me or you are outcasting me because we've got Aries there as well. Next to Chiron. And Aries is the asteroid of discord, someone who got outcasted from a wedding party. And it can feel like that justice is only served to a certain category or a certain number of people, but somehow I'm not part of that. So it feels like that I'm insecure about who I am. And it feels like that we have got these outsiders who are threatening our little nest, and that's Jupiter in Cancer. So it really smells like that this tug of war is going to be about immigration situation, actually, or at least it really feels like it. And then we're going to have clashes happening here. And, the Jupiter and Chiron is pretty much telling me that we must protect our own. We must be emotionally prepared. We must honor our ancestors. That's what Jupiter and Chiron square is pretty much kind of like talking to me about. And then Pluto in Aquarius, that's very revolutionary. We have got that diplomat here, the new moon in Libra, that is being questioned by a powerful figure, someone who is cool, detached, ideologically very driven, and then it is like, oh, what's the sentiment for? Um, so somehow we've got this diplomat who might be getting paralyzed here. And then we've got that warrior who wants to abandon a partnership. And because it feels betrayed. So therefore, it could really talk to us about a contractual agreement that is falling apart because Chiron in Aries decides to walk out of it. But it is doing it just to protect its own, its own family, its own territory, and so forth. So when we are looking at that yacht configuration with the Uranus and the Saturn Neptune, we've got that Saturn Neptune, which is the mystic elder type of archetype there. So this is about, I mean, Saturn tries to provide structure to something that is formless. Neptune is the great dream, the American dream syndrome. And the Saturn is like trying to do a bit of an awakening here, dissolving the boundaries around that big dream, that maybe this dream is kind of like unachievable somehow. And Uranus in Gemini is a little bit like the divine. trickster. So, yes, it can give us a flash of lightning, a flash of intuition as well, or a sudden insight, a shocking piece of news, but certain type of disruptions as well. And it really feels like that with the Uranus, we're talking about paradoxes, or it tries to break down the old ways of thinking and communicating. And it can really give us those aha moments as well. And then all of a sudden, it shatters our worldviews. So, we've got this mystic elder type of archetype who is let's call it as a pope, for example, or someone who has got this spiritual mission, and then it is kind of like trying to share this timeless truth about forgiveness and interconnectedness and all those type of stuff. But all of a sudden, Uranus might be doing this little piece of information that is shocking things up a little bit. And imagine that we've got this Libra, which is the diplomat, is kind of like at a breaking point, feeling somehow trapped between, the selfish demands of the wounded healer and the emotional needs, let's say, of the family or the tribe and the society. So which one am I gonna go with? And all of a sudden we can get this fated message. We can get this intuitive hit, a shocking piece of information. And then I start seeing the truth. And maybe I'm ready to move on. And then I'm ready to make certain type of adjustments because that's what the Yod would be talking about. By the way, we've got a asteroid involved as well, if it wasn't enough, and that's going to be Tisiphone. And Tisiphone was the one of the Furies in Greek mythology, and she is the avenger of murder, the punisher of crimes against natural law. And well, this archetype is not really balanced. It's not that intellectually approaching. Justice. But Tisiphone is actually placed now in the sign of Libra. So she's going to represent retribution. She is the voice that screams, when a sacred oath has been broken or, an unforgivable wrong has been committed and all the karmic debt needs to be paid. So Tisiphone is on 24 degree of Libra, while the new moon is on 28 degree of Libra. So this is actually a little bit far. But the reason why I think Tisiphone is very important here, because it has got an exact square to Jupiter and exact opposition to Chiron. So therefore, definitely Tisiphone plays a very significant role. So the Libra energy is seeking balance here. But we've got this kind of judge. And, we want to create a new order here. We want to understand that no new peace treaty, for example, can be signed until a past crime has been answered for. So, I mean, in this case, I would call the Chiron in Aries energy is kind of like the accuser. Someone, Chiron in Aries is not just fighting for its own existence right now, but it's kind of like pointing a finger towards someone, like that judge type of energy. And, it's kind of like telling that judge that, okay, so you want to create a peace, you want to do this and that, but what about me? What happens to that injustice done to me? What about the wound to my identity that caused, me suffering, for example? So it feels something is out of order, something is like injustice right there. And why are you trying to balance something out, kind of like excluding me out of it? So, and then we've got the Jupiter in Cancer, which is very much a mom archetype, really. And then we've got this mummy who is trying to protect her own tribe. So, Jupiter in Cancer says, okay, so you want to protect your own. What type of crime did we overlook here? What secrets did you keep? What injustice did you allow to happen under the roof of, roof for the sake of the family or the family security? So that's pretty much very briefly what this new moon looks like. I mean, as you can see, this is a little bit more on the challenging side, unfortunately. So you're going to have to be very cautious about how you are dealing with this. I think, like I said with the yod, that is actually an invitation of having to make certain type of adjustment. That's going to be super important. Otherwise, this upcoming at least few months could become quite, yeah, quite like being edgy about it. So do you let me know how you feel about this new moon and if you would like to get more weekly forecasts from me, or you would like personal reading, for example, or you would like a yearly forecast that I prepared. Each sign is approximately about 2.5 hours. Then you might want to check out my website. And by the way, I'm going to have a very exciting couple of webinars coming up as well. One of the webinars is going to be taking place this weekend. And this webinar is going to be looking at the planetary nodes. So it's not only the moon and the sun that has got planetary nodes, but we do have got other planets as well, like Uranus or Neptune. So I'm going to be introducing those to you this weekend. And the following weekend, I'm going to be talking to you about a timing technique. And that's going to be about the daily harmonic charts. So I hope to see you there and have a lovely weekend, everyone. Take care. Bye bye.